Dancing with ourselves.
Dancing with ourselves. Avoiding copyright. 7 seconds long. Hey,
That's
everybody.
right.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Yes and Brand Show. I am your host, Kathy Klotz-Guest. You know me. I'm the founder of Keeping It Human. And this is the show where we talk about yes and being the cornerstone of improv. And why do we even care? Because yes and is really about being open to possibilities and moving conversations forward. And with that, that is sort of the embodiment of what we try to do with Yes and Brand Show. We want to have smart conversation. We want to have conversation that moves us forward, just like we would in an improv scene. We want to yes and each other. And I am excited to introduce a guest that I feel like I know, but here's the revelation. We're just now talking for the first time live, and that's Phil Gerbyshak. And Phil is a speaker, a coach, an author, a strategist in sales and marketing, digital marketing. And he is cool, and he's got awesome glasses. I think we can agree on that.
That's all I got, Kathy. I should leave now. That's all anybody needs to know.
Well, what can you say? I mean, that's laudable right there. But he's got a wonderful personality, and I love Phil's personality. And I gotta just give kudos to, this is why I love social media so much. If you do your job right, as Phil and I were saying before we went live, you feel like you know the person. And even though we're just now talking live for the first time, Phil has such a wonderful footprint in the world and such a lovely sort of sensibility in the world that I feel like I know something about him before we've even chatted live. And I think that's really the power and the testament of if you do social media right.
Absolutely.
So, high five, buddy. High five, Phil. Well, let's chat. Let's talk about this conversation. Hey, Daryl. Hey. Yes. And Jennifer, welcome. Oh my gosh. All these people, this is fabulous. So I set out with an intent to have a conversation around, I know everybody's favorite topic, women speakers and stages.
Yeah.
It's an important topic. And originally what I hope to do is to have a couple conversations. This won't be the first. I mean, it is the first, but won't be the last, I should say. But I just want to move the conversation forward a little bit. And originally what I wanted to do is have 2 men, 2 women, make it more of a TV show format, but logistics and scheduling being what it is, I couldn't get everybody together. But who better to, I think, launch into this with than somebody that I really respect and I admire, and someone who's fun. So we can have a fun, respectful conversation than Phil. So with that, that's the agenda for today.
Awesome. That's what I signed up for. So I'm glad to hear that that's exactly it. No bait and switch here. We're just going ahead. So I got it, Kathy.
No, we're just going ahead. And I'll tell you what started for me, Phil, and we'll see, as people kind of filter through what their questions are. And if you join us, please let us know you're here and we'll take your questions. I'll tell you, the Me Too movement, it's not like I needed a memo from, or a Goodyear blimp message that this was a problem. And I think in light of the Me Too movement, I think, we talked a lot about sexual harassment, and I think the conversation has yet to really turn towards kind of gender parity in the everyday workplace. Yes, sexual harassment is an issue. The everyday thing is gender parity and equality and all these different things at work. And I, as a speaker myself, I see this up close and personal, and women are always talking about it. We're, the Whisper Network. Well, we're talking about it at conferences too. And I think it really hit home for me, not just my experiences, but when CES said they could not find a female keynote, and I lost my mind. I went,
where the hell are they looking?
Where are they looking? Where are you looking? Are you looking like for loose change under the, couch cushions? Because probably you're not going to find it there.
Where'd it go?
Damn it, I lost that female speaker back in your couch.
Fell out of my pocket. What the hell?
Out of my pocket in the van. That's probably a bad reference in light of Me Too. But and so I thought, okay, we got to talk about this. So Phil, I launched that salvo. That's sort of what got me going. And I think a lot of women were speaking up. And I think the reason it got traction, although they never had a female keynote speaker, they didn't fix the problem. They said, we have a pipeline problem. And, I call BS on that. And a lot of CEOs and CMOs in tech, men were speaking up and saying, What? Come on. Where are you looking? Where are you looking? There are so many smart women out there. Why can't you fix this problem? And so that sort of got me thinking more and more about why aren't we talking about this issue? So that's the premise, Phil. What say you?
Yeah. Well, that's a great premise, and I think it's important that we do talk about that. We need to talk about some of the truths, though, about what really ends up happening, and the whole pipeline problem could mean that perhaps your stinking application process is too long, or perhaps you're just looking for people that like, hey, I know Kathy, so I can only ask her. Well, that's only I only know one woman. Well, use the power of Google and go look, right? Like, come on. It's not that hard anymore. But I 10 years ago, 20 years ago, okay, I get that, right? They're not in your Rolodex, maybe. Okay, but come on. I mean, use LinkedIn, use Google, figure it out. This isn't that hard. Yeah.
No, it's so true. I think there is an unconscious bias. And I know when I say the word bias, people go, bias. It's not what you think. It really is just not thinking about it. It's not an intentional thing. And I just want to say that because I think when we talk about it, part of the reason it polarizes is people hear bias and they go, "Ooh, bias is bad." Well, every human being has unconscious bias. I have unconscious bias about something. You know why? Because I'm human. And it's okay. There's no shame in it. The thing is, we have to talk about it. Well, why aren't we thinking about it? And I think it's to your point, Phil. One of the things I would agree with you 20 years ago. Exactly. We might be going, okay, but that pipeline problem excuse is like the dog ate my homework and 20 years later, we're still using it. And I'm like, that is some shit. I mean, hello, you can't keep using that excuse when there are so many women, not only Google, but my God, I mean, what, you don't know people who know people? That's the power of the network. You go to LinkedIn, you go ask your friends for references and referrals. It's no different than if I went and said, hey, Phil, I'm going to be traveling to Tampa. You know Tampa, you live there. Could you make some recommendations? I mean, it's just common sense. I mean, do we need a Yelp for women speakers? I mean, what is up with that?
Well, no, but we do need to remind folks that it isn't just your first degree network, though. I think that's the first thing, right? We think we're so darn smart that if we don't know somebody, they don't exist, right? That's the first problem I believe that we have, Kathy, is we cannot do a good job until we admit that we don't know everybody. That's problem number one, right? And sometimes, as a guy, right, if I believe that people look to me to be the answer instead of just finding the answer, that can present some problems. So acknowledge that, hey, I'm not the only smart guy, right? And be more collaborative. I think that's a good first step, and put it out there, right? Because I'll tell you, Kathy, if I just think about it, top of mind, okay, I probably have 5 or 10. But if I actually put 10 minutes of effort in, now I've got 100 or 500, right? And that's the difference. Don't just think that you're the smartest person in the room, right? Use your smarts, use your network, ask some questions. To your point, ask, hey, who do you recommend that, and challenge that, right? If all you see is 37 dudes that pop up, well, challenge that, right? Why is that? And acknowledge. Maybe you need to ask it again. And because, frankly, I've got friends of mine that if they see too many comments already, they're going to feel like, oh, well, my comment doesn't matter. So open it back up. Ask again. Yeah. You have to be a little bit more creative and maybe a little bit more intentional about the ask to make this happen. But it's totally possible. Totally possible, right? There's no pipeline problem. There's a problem asking the question. That's the problem.
Well said. I so agree with you. Now, you bring up a really important point because we do stop at that first level ask. And, I do believe we're all connected by far fewer than, 6 degrees of separation. It's more like 2 or 3. So if you aren't getting the ask met and the need met, you're so right. Ask again. Ask a different network. Don't go to the same network. If you're asking LinkedIn and you always get the same answers, maybe go ask your speaker friends and keep asking till you get more. And I think, you said something about Google. We all need to remember that sometimes a speaker it's convenient to go to our networks. The problem is the unconscious bias again, is that the same people keep popping up. And so if we really want to be intentional, and you said it so well, I think this problem is solvable, but it's being purposeful about it. You can't keep going every year back to the well and going, hey, do you know any women speakers? Well, why year to year, if you're a conference, are you not during the year in between conferences? Are you not identifying smart women, following them on Twitter, reaching out to them, having a short list so that next year you're not reinventing the wheel? And I'll tell you, Phil, I've seen conference organizers do this where every year it's, hey, do you know any women speakers? And I'm like, we just had that conversation last year and I identified a dozen women that I thought would be great speakers. So I think it's that intentionality that you're talking about. If you make it a priority, it will be a priority, but you got to actually hold yourself accountable to that.
Yeah, well, and sometimes we have that turnover, though, right? In the meeting industry, we see turnover. So what I would also encourage is you have to widen out your selection committee as well. If, because there are some conferences, they use one speakers bureau exclusively.
Oh, yeah.
That's part of the problem as well. And a lot of times these speakers bureaus are owned by women, which sometimes they're not as good about suggesting fellow women because their roster is probably 60-40 men. So go to another bureau, right? Go somewhere else. And again, be intentional about if they're not presenting the mix that you want, then go somewhere else. It is not just, again, not about that first tier relationship. Broaden it out, right?
Yeah, I agree. Lisa says, Phil works hard to identify men and women. I think that's really true. I think that's important. And I know in talking to Robert Rose that Sam World tries very hard to do the same thing. And what they did is they established an advisory board. And the reason that Joe and Robert made headway on that conference is because they actually set an intention of, they got an advisory board together headed by a woman who made this a priority, and they announced it. So they held themselves to a public, not only accountability, but then they could recruit other people out there to feed back into them and to give them references. And so I think it gets to what you're saying. And you made a really important point about speakers bureaus. And I want to just chime in here because I've had some very interesting discussions with a lot of women run speakers bureaus. And I have personally had women say to me, Kathy, you're funny, but we don't see a lot of funny women out there. And I'm like, hold up, they're out there. And they'll say to me, help us identify them. And I'm like, I will. And there's a reason that this kind of self-perpetuates is you're right. We keep going back to the same well, and we forget that there's new talent that's always coming up. And if you're constantly going back to the same voices, you're not pulling from up and coming talent. You're not looking in new places where talent might be. Not everybody's on Twitter. They should be. But if you go to YouTube, for example, you will find more women voices popping up on YouTube that are prolific. So go expand the social media ranges that you're looking in. I think everything you're saying, Phil, is so spot on. Keep asking until you get there. But there is that worldview that we have to shatter. We sort of get comfortable in a cushy way of asking, and if we don't get out of our own little headspace, we don't see new talent.
Yeah, well, I'd also say I want to throw a little bit of this back on the women that are listening here and encourage you to do more video. Okay, do more video because seriously, you don't have to be perfect. And I hear, but people are going to judge me. I hear this from women that I coach all the time, Kathy. People are going to judge me. Screw them. Like, screw them. Who cares? Do it anyway. You don't have to be perfect. Do some, I call it live video, which is this stuff, right? We're not edited versus produced video. Do more live video of how you really are and your real passion and your real energy. Because you know what? There aren't enough videos out there of the up and coming, to your point, right? Because if we've got a finite budget, we do need to pick some up and comers and some superstars. There's no doubt about it. But come on, like, let me pick you. Get your darn video out there, because the biggest reason that people are afraid to hire any speaker is because they can't prove that they're going to be good on stage, right? Not that they're not smart.
Yeah.
It's that we can't prove they're not good in front of a camera, or they're not good in front of an audience. So women especially, right? If you're listening, please do more video that isn't perfect. That isn't perfect. Just do it.
That is such an important point, and I'm so glad you're bringing that up. Oh my God, Phil, checks in the mail. No, it's such an important point, and I think women feel the pressure to be perfect because we're held to a different standard, maybe, and we're sure. and we feel it, and so we feel. Now, I don't, but that's because I've been doing 20 years of improv comedy, and I'm fluent in humanity and imperfection, and that is the currency that makes Kathy. So people, when they hire me, they fully, if they haven't seen or read anything I've written, then they wouldn't know that. But if they've read anything or seen anything, they know what they're getting. But that's to Phil's point, and it's so beautiful and so important. Be who you are, show up, be real. Let people experience you and what it would be like to hear your voice and who you really are. And I can't emphasize that enough. And so many people are like, but I won't be perfect. And who cares? You don't want to be perfect. There is no such thing. So just get out there, start talking about your passion. And I think Phil's right. Women especially do feel that like extra added pressure of I'm going to be judged at a different standard. Guess what? You will. Everybody will. There's nothing you can do about it. There's going to be people there who do not like me. And guess what? That's okay. I'm for those people who do. And that's my tribe. So I don't care. And if you split the market, amen, hallelujah. That's what you're supposed to do. You're not for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
do it.
You can't be, right? Some people like salt, some like pepper, some don't like either. Who gives a crap? Be for those people who are for you, right? Focus there.
That's it. Totally. I want to get back to something that you said, because I know you're being tongue-in-cheek, JS, but it's an important point. And I'm going to call you out this one. I'd hire female all day long because they're much cheaper. See, and that's the point, JS. That's the point. Funny, true, sad, tragic, all those things layered. It's true and it shouldn't be. When women are on stages, what the research shows is that we are paid less. We are more often likely to speak for free or to be seriously underpaid compared to our male counterparts. And that research has been done by Catalyst Group and a couple other big research organizations. So the data exists out there. And I know you're being tongue-in-cheek, JS, because I know you, but it is a problem. In fact, it's a big problem. So when women do negotiate, they're more likely to not ask for what they need, and that part of that is because, you're going to have, like Phil, you said, you're going to have keynotes are paid differently. Other conference speakers are paid differently. It depends on your experience and your visibility and your value add. So there's a myriad number of variables. I get it. But I think in general, it's very important to, and it's not always transparent, but it's important to ask. It's important for women to say, hey, what are you paying the men who are maybe at my level, the new voices? Some conferences will not tell you. I mean, they won't, but some conferences will negotiate with you, and they will not maybe give you more money if the budget's tight, but they will buy more books from you. If you're an author, I'm an author, it helps me. They will buy, I just negotiated 300 copies of my book because they had what they didn't have in speaking budget, they had in book budget. So ladies, please negotiate. Learn to ask. The worst you can have is no, but you gotta ask.
Yeah, that's so true. And I would say, understand the bands of speakers that there are, and understand kind of where you fit in those bands, right? If you're an up and comer, you're not going to get $15,000. Right? Let's just be honest. And that's not because you're a woman or because you're a guy. It's because you're an up and comer. Right? Yeah. So just be honest with yourself about where you are. But I would say, especially for women, because I see this, be more confident. Yeah. I'm not trying to, I promise, I know I'm a guy. I'm not trying to mansplain here. But I see this, unfortunately, because I have friends of mine who are women that struggle with this. So please know your darn value. Know and just own it. Just own your darn value, right? It's okay. If you're in the 5 to 75, it's okay to start at 75 and go down to 5. It's impossible to start at 5 and go up to 75. So just own your band, ask the question, and think value, right? What value does this bring, so that if you do negotiate a little bit down, you understand why. Like, you have a reason. You have to have a reason for this. It's so important, right? You don't just wilt, oh, okay, I'll take less. No. Why?
Yeah.
Give me a reason. Right? Give me a reason why, and then own that.
Own it. Yeah. No mansplaining here. I'm appreciative, and that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk and get a male perspective too, because sometimes it's helpful to remind us of this. And it is absolutely true. One of the things that I learned a lot was negotiating, and coming out of Silicon Valley. That's a whole other
kettle of fish.
Kettle of fish. And I had to learn in my career early that I would not get half of what I got if I had not asked. Did I get everything? Absolutely not. Nobody does. But by asking, I got more things than if I hadn't asked. So the worst that can happen is you say no. I had a Lisa Leffler probably knows this story. I had a conference organizer call me and want me to speak again. I had spoken at this conference in 2016. I got one of the highest ratings I did a workshop and a talk. I got one of the highest ratings, and I was told there wasn't any money. I didn't get paid. I found out all the men who got lower workshop ratings, Phil, got paid. They got paid. And when I pressed, it was, well, we don't have any budget. We spent all the budget on the men. And I said, well, that's a problem. I can't speak for free. And what I got back, and this happens, ladies, I got back well, I thought you liked our conference. And I said, I do. And you know what else I like? Paying my bills. Because they don't take
the mortgage.
They don't take Monopoly money. Believe me, I have tried. I've used my library card, Safeway card, almost got away with that one, but no. And I thought, they are not mutually exclusive things. I do like your conference, and I should be paid at value. I got the highest ratings, and you've paid the men, but you booked the men first. Then the women are left to last. And it was like, oh, help me, Kathy. 40% of our attendees are women, and we forgot to book women. Now we don't have any budget. Oops, it's your problem, and you should then suck it up. Here's what happened, guys. I said no. Guess what? I'm not speaking at that conference. And am I okay with it? 100%. They didn't value me anyway. So here's the thing. You're not always going to get it, even when you push back. But at least you know, and you have the information to go, you know what? That conference doesn't value me. Why would I go spend 3-4 days traveling across the country to not get paid? Why would I do that? So then you can start to make better decisions. So it's not always going to work out, but I feel much better that I claimed my value and I told him where that line in the sand, Phil, was.
well, it's so important, right? It's so important that we're really clear about that. Yeah. Right, that we're really clear about where that is. Now, this, guys too that are listening here, I want to encourage you. This is so important that you own your crap, right? Own your value. That doesn't mean it's always going to be yes.
No.
So if whoever's listening, right, it's so important that you understand that and know your value, stand by it, and know that it is not about the fee. It is about the value that's exchanged. It's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. No question. And this is a gender neutral issue. You're so right, Phil. It's anybody, male, female. We all have to know our value. Yep. And you do have to separate out. I'll get to Lisa, your comments, a good one. We do have to separate, to your point, Phil, because I think it can get lost in the shuffle. If you, to reiterate what you said, which is so important, if you are an up-and-comer, that doesn't mean you don't have value. You have value. But if you're not getting offered the same thing, to Phil's point, it isn't really a gender issue. It's because they don't know you. You're an unknown quantity. They can't quantify your value. That doesn't mean you don't have it. And that's where ladies and guys negotiate for video footage, negotiate for maybe getting early on the billing and getting a keynote spot, negotiate for books, negotiate for something else of value if you can, if money is not what they can do, but know sort of what you can and cannot do. But it's also important to ask after the fact for ratings, reviews, all those things, because those things will either validate or maybe help you adjust your rate. And you need to know that. And conference organizers, I think, have a transparency obligation to give that to you. If you,
Absolutely.
And if they're not giving it to you so that you can adjudicate and make a common sense decision about your value to that conference, that's not right. You have a right to say, okay, there were reviews, people gave reviews. What did I get? And demand to see that. I think that's just for everybody, male, female, whatever. The issue that I will say in this conference organizer situation that I experienced is that the reason I know gender was a factor is because he kept scrambling year after year for 3 years in a row. I don't have enough women. I don't have enough women. And I was like, I just gave you a list of women last year. Why is it you wait till last minute to book the women when all the budget is magically gone, Phil? And then that becomes a de facto.
Absolutely. That's a huge problem, right? That's where, to your point, I think, Kathy, it's so important that you said, I walked away, right? Once you identify that, that is someone you should be putting in your short list of jackasses never to work with again.
He's up there.
Because frankly, right? I mean, truly though, and then we also then need to be more transparent about people that actually pull this crap. Because part of the reason this happens is because we think it's just us. They just were this way to me. Kathy, I am positive that whoever this person was is not this way to just you. And
you're right. Here's the thing about that. And I'm so glad you said that, Phil. That is such an important point. I think women also, and I know a little something about that. I have an owner's manual.
You're a woman. Holy cow.
Oh my God. So here's what I think is hard, Phil, for women is that we're treated this way, not by all, obviously. There's a lot of amazing conference organizers who make it a priority, but we're treated this way by some conference organizers. And then there's sort of this layer of secrecy that you can't talk about it. Like somehow we're expected to put up with it. Then how dare you talk about it? So that code of silence, then what that does is it keeps women from sticking together and demanding better. And so I wrote a letter, an open letter to speakers. I wrote it to my speaking brothers and I put it out there. I don't know if you remember that letter, Phil.
Oh yeah, I totally do. Of course.
Put it out there and it got shared so many times. I heard from women I didn't even know. To Phil's point, you're not alone because I wrote that letter and the floodgates open. I was getting emails. I was getting Facebook messages and women, dozens of women I didn't know personally said, oh my God, your story, that happened to me. A certain number of those women, Phil, figured out who the conference organizer was because the same conversation happened for them.
Always does. This is never isolated, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
This is the thing. So even if you don't name the conference, please come forward and say that this has happened to you because I can tell you, Kathy, not that I'm stupid, but I certainly didn't realize the extent of how crappy this was until you wrote that letter. Like I read that, I'm like, holy crap! Like, yeah, this happens. My gosh! And then and I watch people comment on your Facebook post and I'm like, wow! Like that's the thing, and I think that's the thing we need to remember here, folks. Is this is not Kathy's experience. Stop. This is real experience of more than just Kathy, but Kathy's brave enough to speak out. So first, don't shout her down. And secondly, understand if there's one Kathy, there's 100 Kathys. There's 1,000 Kathys. Yeah. And women, please be brave. Please be brave. Know that you have brothers and guys like me who, frankly, we don't, I didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Again, it's not because I'm stupid. It just doesn't happen to me.
Right.
Right. So, so please, know that you have people that care about you, that want things good for you of the opposite gender. So don't be shy about this. I'm not telling you got to go thrash somebody on Facebook. It's not what I'm saying. But do make a point as you're with your speaker friends, even if they're guys. It might make them a little uncomfortable, but you got to build some awareness because otherwise we're not going to know. So please, please, please be brave.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I got so many responses from men too that were like, Kathy, I had no idea. And I was like, well, that's why I wrote it. I thought long and hard. I was kind of fuming for like a week. And then I said, somebody should speak up about this. And my husband just looked at me and goes, if only I knew a smart, funny woman who could, who do I know? Who do I know that should speak up? And so I did, and I was pleasantly surprised because not only did women respond, but I had a lot of male speaker friends who said, I had no idea. 2, this allows me to support you. And so my goal was to make them aware so that they could support their speaking sisters. That's what I wanted them to that's what I hoped to accomplish. And I felt like it did work. I got an angry email or 2 from an organizer who, didn't get what I was saying, but that's okay. I also heard from a lot of women that said, when you write the next piece, and I said, you mean when you write the next piece? Because this is not me. This is we. This is we. Like, if everyone's waiting for Kathy Klotz-Guest to I probably will, because let's face it, I'm a little bit of a shit disturber. That's what, I like to speak up. I like to feel empowered and use my voice. I also try to use humor to make a point. But it can't just be one person. So, my hope is that I think I didn't mean to, and I'm honored that people read it. I'm honored that people responded, and I hope more of us come forward. I did hear from women who not only had the same conversation with the same organizer, Phil, but 2 of those women, I am so honored, said that in light of what happened to me, they went back to the organizer and ripped up the contract and said, there's no way I'm doing business with you. So he has already lost some female speakers because of that. They don't want to be a quota. They don't want to be an after the fact quota. So yeah, we just need to keep speaking up. That's it.
Yep, absolutely.
Lisa says something very important. Build relationships. I think that's so true.
Yeah, well, that is super true. That is super, super true. So, hey, Lisa, first of all, it's good to see you. So, second of all, remember, again, the reason they don't know is often because they don't know. So, help them know. Take the time. Really, really important, right? Take the time, build the relationships so that you can stay in the front of the mind instead of just being an afterthought. Even if it's not the perfect event for you, invest a little bit of time, build that relationship, because then here's what happens. If you're helpful and you listen, you spend some time there, and then you say, well, you know what? That isn't perfect for me, but you know who that might be really great for? Yeah. Now you've got some influence here, and you're seen as helpful, which, that's the thing. If you're helpful, people want your help. So it's not that hard. And then you say, well, you know what? And maybe next year it will be a better fit for me. Yeah. Oh, okay. Fantastic. That's so important. So yes, take the time, build a relationship, be brave, and have those conversations.
That's such a great point, because there have been times I've said I can't do something, but I know women or great men. To me, it's about finding the right fit. But if I do know that they're low on women speakers, I will make it a point to make some recommendations about that. And that's where we can help each other, is just finding the right fit, helping people find the right fit of both genders so that they're getting the best of the best out there. And that's really important. Hey, Adrian. Adrian has a great point here. It's well known. Yeah. That profess women's conferences, blah, 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 don't pay women speakers much, if anything. What needs to change there? How do we help with that? You're absolutely right. First of all, thank you for your comment. I think that's very true. They don't. And even women's conferences don't. They just assume they pay women in exposure. So
they get frostbite? Is that good for you? Do you like frostbite, Kathy?
Exactly. Well, I get paid exposure when rainbows and unicorns aren't available. Or pink Monopoly money, because, I'm a woman. So, of course I like it pink. But that's a great question. I think part of why I speak out is so guys do know, and guys can start asking questions. Like if I can do nothing but help educate and inform my amazing speaker guy friends, because I have a lot of them, they can start asking the question, hey, you know what? I see you don't have a lot of women speaking on your roster thus far. You know who would be great for this conference? Let me refer you to some women. And by the way, are you paying women at parity? Because then all of a sudden, when the men start asking, what are you paying women? Are they getting paid? Then it becomes, I think, a greater accountability. And also, when we ask sponsors, imagine if you're a conference organizer, woman speaker, you might kind of blow off. But what happens when the male speakers or a sponsor, all of a sudden Salesforce, is calling saying, yeah, we want to sponsor this conference, but it's very important because we say that we value parity and gender equity. Are you paying your women speakers the same? Because we are a sponsor. We would like to know. For us to keep funding your conference, please let us know. And I think organizers have a right to know. I mean, what do you think, Phil?
Yeah, I totally think that's
sponsors,
true. I mean, well, organizers, sponsors, attendees, right? I think it's fair that we all understand that. I think that's a big question. I'm curious though, if we answered Adrian's question, because he's talking about women-specific conferences here, Kathy.
Okay.
Women-specific or associations, I bet, and women-specific things, and how how that can change. And I think the answer to that, first of all, is we need to understand what is the profitability of some of those conferences.
Yes.
That's the big question, right? So as we have things that are specific to women or specific even to men, right? Because I can tell you, I've been to men's conferences where sometimes the ticket price is only $50, in which case you're not paying speakers hardly crap, right? So you need to understand first, like, what's the ticket price? And if it's lower, right, then we need to think again about that value conversation. Is it because it's just, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, if it's just a bunch of chicks hanging out, or is this a valuable conference?
Yeah.
Right? If this is a marketing conference, if this is a Salesforce conference, as a guy, again, we need to encourage that we have some of that cross-pollination. And how a guy can help that, I think, is that we absolutely, we can find ways to sponsor it. We can make sure that, if it is women only, right, that we support and we help promote that stuff. I mean, and do it at least equally of what we do the guys' stuff. Because again, if you put it in the front of your brain and you think about that and you think about, okay, how do I help promote my sisters? How do I promote, because frankly, again, sometimes that is a confidence thing and encouraging them. Like Blistum used to be, Allie Worthington's conference, and encouraging that conference to just go get it, right? To make sure that you're kicking some booty and be an encourager. I think that's one of the biggest thing guys can do is be an encouragement and then pony up to sponsor that. Even if you can't attend, send another representative of your company so that you're pouring some dollars in to help raise the fee. What do you think, Kathy?
I think it's a great point. And thank you for clarifying that, because now that I'm reading, Adrian, I'm rereading your comment. Yes, I see women's conferences. So yes, great point. We want to answer that. No, I think everything you said, I totally agree with, Bill. I think here's the thing. I live in Silicon Valley, so we don't call them men's conferences. We just call them conferences. Like Men's Day is Monday through Friday out here. And that's just the fact of it. Look, 6% of executives in Silicon Valley, 6% are women. To say that women are underrepresented is comically an underestimation. But the point is this. I think a lot of times I have to be careful how I say it. Some folks, some sponsors will look at an all women's conference and go, what's in it for us? It's sort of like, and I'm just going to throw it out there. My husband doesn't like to watch like women's basketball. I love women's basketball. I think they're incredible. My husband goes, yeah, but men won't watch it. Well, and that we see that they're not paid the same. They don't have the viewership. They don't have the sponsors. The big money isn't there. And I think that's kind of what, you're saying, Phil. It's, we have to be careful that there's value there so that we can encourage men to want to sponsor, be part of it, come. We're not saying it has to be a women's only in the attendee kind of arena. No, bring men into the conversation. We need men. We're allies. We're in this together. Bring men into the conversation. I don't like seeing women's conferences that are all necessarily women speakers. I think the main speakers should be, but I'd love to hear what men have to say about changing it. Like we're talking now, I'd love to see a mixed gender panel to get the men involved in how they can be allies and help with this. And I think if we can do that, maybe we can attract more sponsor money. We can have the men going and get some value out of it. So we have to be very clear about what the value is, to Phil's point. We got to be really, really intentional. And you're right, because the money doesn't tend to be there, women's conferences don't usually pay. But then again, I would say, are they getting sponsors? Is Salesforce or, IBM, whatever, are they actively sponsoring these conferences? Because they should be. And maybe that's a goal, is to help get sponsors and bigger money in that game. But male speakers can help be allies by attending, talking to sponsors, all these different things. I mean, what do you think, Phil?
Yeah, well, I think that's key, right? I mean, we have to, as a guy, I've got to get more involved in that. We've got to and help with that negotiation, right? Sometimes being an ally means being a sounding board, being kind of an informal coach, helping folks do that. And also, I would say, the whole ask thing, sometimes that can be uncomfortable. So like for me, I actually recommend a book called Ask Outrageously by my friend Linda Swindling. It's a terrific book written by a woman about negotiation. So instead of a guy saying negotiate like a guy, instead, right, Linda is an awesome negotiator. She's got her, she's got her law degree. She's a brilliant mind. So instead, offer that, because again, I think sometimes we do have the relatability problem, and I never want to come off like I'm mansplaining. And there are some people that, some women that find that anytime a guy says that they're, that they're trying to explain stuff. So that's why it's good to have that second voice that says, you know what, I get it. Okay, so here's another option for you. So, pick up some of the negotiation books. And that's another thing that we can do. Adrian here asks about, how do they need help demanding budget parity? Well, help them negotiate, right? Help them negotiate, equip them for that, and encourage that. And if you've got a woman who sucks at negotiation, buy a course for her, buy her the book, right? To help her out. Because you know what? I can tell you, I've been fortunate. I've had some great mentors, men and women, who've bought books for me that have changed my life and my perspective. So do the same thing, guys. Definitely. And I know there are big companies that have diversity initiatives. And Adrian, I love your question, because I see this a lot. And you nailed it. You nailed it, Adrian. Because it does happen where there are these support groups in larger companies to help women, but then it becomes, it's a woman's thing versus looking at it as a larger connected diversity initiative. And I think when you've got a diversity council that this feeds into, and there's men there, and the men go, you know what, we need to have budget for this. We are funding this. We are giving it the same funding that we give these other sponsored events within the company. It's no different. It's no lesser. And if you can make sure that the chief inclusion officer or diversity officer, whoever that is connected to that, and it's getting funding, that's a great start. So men, I think to your point, Phil, should be allies and can be wonderful allies. And we need them to speak up and say, yeah, this should get funded. These things need to get funded, because it's kind of this ironic catch-22. And Adrian so nailed it. I've seen big companies where they want bring me in to talk, and then I see that they've got a women's leadership council, and I ask about it, and it's not funded. It's really not supported. It's just another thing and disconnected all by itself, floating like an island. Check the box that we have a women's council. Yes, it's a box. It's a quota. It's just we check the box, and now we're going to tell everybody that it's part of our initiative, and we get the marketing bang for the buck, and we feel good about ourselves. And then I ask the women, they're like, we're not getting funded. The men don't come. It's like, sorry, baseball's on tonight. We don't get any of that stuff. So make it real. If you're going to do it and get the credit for it, put in the work and get men to kind of be part of it, Yeah. Don't just check the box. Absolutely. Don't check the box. Don't phone it in. It's too important. That's such a great question. Thank you, Adrian, for that question. I think it does come down to positive pressure from sponsors, because what I find too is that they can't know it all. Sponsors are human, and they're running 1,000,000 miles an hour, sponsoring a lot of events. And what I have found is that a lot of times they just don't know. They're people too, and they're busy people, and they're not trying to underfund women's events, or they don't know. And so sometimes a call to a sponsor and establishing those relationships my gosh, I've had conversations where a sponsor went, I didn't know. Oh my God, I didn't know. And they feel
they're glad that you told them, because the last thing that they want to be accused of is having this blind spot,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, that's where the relationship comes in, because it's far easier to ask that question to somebody you know than to make a stinking cold call, because then you sound like a harpy, right? That's the last thing you want. You want to sound like someone who, if they say that it isn't important, that it then breaks a relationship. Not just some random person, like, that it's scripted, that, there's always these 7 people that call up about everything. No. This is someone whose valuable relationship is at stake. And you better take their call and you better listen, because it matters. Really important.
It really does. And I think that's, Adrian, I'm so appreciative of your question. And I think that's where, if we can, not just women, but if the men are speaking up to the sponsors and saying, hey, did you know? I think those kinds of things become discovery. And again, we can't take for granted that a sponsor knows these things. That they don't. They got so many things going on. And I really can tell you, honestly, I've had really amazing conversations with sponsors that really didn't know, and they were horrified, and they wanted to rectify, and they wanted to be part of the solution. So some actually really want to do the right thing. So I think that's where transparency and building the relationships and just speaking up is really important. And that's where men can do it. I've many times I have gotten a call from an organizer, and I'm like, how'd you find out about me? And I can say 3/4 of those referrals came from men. My guy friends were looking out for me, and they were like, you know who you should talk to? I got a woman who's funny and smart. Call Kathy. And I am telling you, when you get the allies working for you, that really helps,
Yep.
It really does.
Absolutely. Well, and knowing, though, Kathy, also, I'd say that you're confident enough to close the deal. That's also an important point. Right. So, because here's what you don't want, right, is if I make a referral and somebody's just milquetoast, meh, that's the worst, right? So again, we talked about this before. Own your goodness, right? Own your awesome, and know that you are good enough. If I'm recommending you, you are good enough. So just own that, right? And don't shrill away. Oh no, maybe not. Oh, woe is me. No. Own it. Own it. Own your goodness, right? You're good enough. So that's okay.
Own that juicy goodness. Trademark. Phil Gerbyshak. Own it. TM. No, that's such an important point, and I think for all of us. But and the thing too is, I had to learn it. I mean, I think about, I think a lot of times we just assume that the price is going to be an easy thing to agree on, and it's not always. And there's many ways to calculate price. And Phil, you said it so well. I think the single greatest thing we can do is know our value. And that book, would you repeat that book? What's the book?
Sure. It's called Ask Outrageously by Linda Swindling. Swindling. Linda Swindling.
Linda Swindling. I'm gonna tweet her. Swindling.
Yeah, Linda's great.
So did I get that right? The name right?
That's her. Yep.
Linda Swindling.
Yep.
I think that's fabulous, because I think that's a book we can all use, regardless of
absolutely.
We can all use that. Know your value, such an important thing. Any other kind of thoughts or questions or any kind of comments, Phil?
Well, the thing that I would say is get ready to practice this, because the first couple times it's going to be really uncomfortable for allies, as well as for women who are, maybe used to kind of rolling over and not asking that question. So practice it, get used to it. Know that this is high risk, but it is high reward. And I say that because, you're going to, probably the first time, you're going to tick somebody off. You are. I mean, it's true, right? You're going to tick somebody off. Who cares? Do it anyway, right? So that's what I would say. And then, understand that sometimes we don't understand. Like I'm speaking for guys here, right? We don't always know. So please, if you see something and a guy says, really, that's a problem, understand they're not saying that because they're questioning you. They're trying to understand so that they can see the bigger problem. So, so it's not because a guy's trying to mansplain. It's because sometimes we just don't know, right? I don't have the same discrimination that you do, Kathy. And please, and I know that's true. So that means I'm probably going to ask what seems like a stupid question coming from a guy, but I promise not because I don't know. Like if I say really, it doesn't mean I don't believe you. It means help me understand more, because I want to be able to recognize it next time so that I can be a better ally for you. So, that's the big thing, right? So practice, understand that it's risky, and then be patient with us stupid guys who don't have experience, because we're trying here, but you got to be patient with us, because I want to know. But if you make me feel stupid, I'm not going to ask again. I'm just going to go away.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And I love that you brought that up, because I have been nothing but supported by my speaker brothers when I've spoken up. And that is because I have had conversations like I am with you. And I want them to understand where I'm coming from. And sometimes they will do exactly what you said. They'll say, really? They're not questioning my credibility, as Phil says. They're questioning it because they haven't had to deal with it. So it's new to them. They're processing. They're going, I didn't realize that was going on. So I really think the greatest gift that we can give each other is listening. It's listening. Because more often than not, I have found by speaking up, gosh, Jennifer, you're so right. Think that's such a beautiful way to put it. Let's give each other the grace of growth. I have found that more often than not, my speaker brothers, they want to learn. They just don't know. So I know it can be a touchy thing. And I think part of the reason women are on edge is because we are mansplained to a lot. But I think you have to look at the intentionality. And if your male speaker friend is really asking a lot of questions, he's interested, he wants to know, he wants to help you. And he's asking because he wants to support you. And I think we have to assume innocence. I like to presume innocence. And that's sort of how I like to my mindset in the world. And part of that is just, I think it really is listening, and privilege is invisible. Oh my God, Adrienne. I love you, Adrienne. I don't know you, but I love you for saying that. I think that's really an important point. I think a guy said to me, well, I never experienced that. And one of my guy friends, and I said, well, isn't that wonderful that you've not had to deal with that? Because in my 20s, I worked for a boss that when I was bending over, changing the copy machine, groped my ass. So you know what? That you're a 6'4" white male in the world. That's great. God bless that you've never had to deal with being groped by your own boss. And then you couldn't tell the HR person because the HR person said, he brings in a lot of money to the organization. Just deal with it. Because that kind of shit's real. I'm just going to get real for a second. That shit is real for women. So you're right. Privilege is invisible. And we all need grace to hear each other out. So to speak our truth. So I love that you said that. Talk to your guy friends and just be open about it and let them ask questions, let them help you. And I think one of the other things I would say, sort of in closing too, Phil, is that, and for all the women out there and maybe men who don't realize it, women work so hard to prove their value. And so when a guy pushes back on us, when we give a number and a quote, and maybe Linda's talked about this in her book, we are more quick to fold because we think, oh, I'm going to lose it. Don't be so quick to assume that you're going to lose it. And if you lose the gig anyway, it's probably for the best. But women are so quick to try to be pliable. We want to please. So the minute somebody says, well, why do you think that? We have a tendency to want to back off that and drop what we asked for. And it is going to be uncomfortable, like Phil says, but it's so important that we do that because otherwise we're just, we don't get what we don't ask for.
Yep. And we don't get what we can't back up. So you can't just pull a number from the air that says this is your number, right? You have to, that's where knowing your value, that's really the first step to getting what you want. So know your value, and understand that you are valuable, right? Don't suffer from that imposter syndrome. I get it. But just understand, right? Do the math yourself. I mean, if you impact, right, $100 every time you talk, you impact each person by $100, and there's 1,000 people in the audience. You just impacted $100,000. $100,000. Are you not worth 5%, 10% of that? Of course you are. So own that, right? But understand it first, so that you have to convince yourself first. Really, really important, right? That you are good enough, you are strong enough, right? And you can do this stuff.
You absolutely You absolutely do. And I would say any organizer, male or female, by the way, this is gender neutral, that says to you, I thought you liked our conference. Run. Don't walk away from, run.
That's the wrong thing, right? Hey, Kathy, I'd like to buy your book. Well, no, I'd like you to give me a copy of your book, right? Oh, no, the book is $20. No, but I thought you liked me. They're not the same.
They're not the same.
They're not the same.
They're not the same.
Come on.
And they're not mutual. They're not the same. And I'm so with you, Phil. Any conference organizer that will do that isn't valuing you. And that is not a gender attachment issue. It's just a jerk. It's just a not nice human being who wants to get a freebie. And so who doesn't value you. So those are the kinds of statements that I don't think it's worth negotiating. So I think, to Phil's point, you have to know when it's worth engaging and when it's worth just saying, you know what, I can't make this work, and the best I can do is to walk away. And
bye-bye.
And bye-bye. I just want to make sure, one more sweep. We got everybody's questions. Oh my gosh, so many great questions and comments. Yep. Yeah, not saying anything. Adrian, you are amazing. I love that. Yeah, if we don't speak up, we don't get what we don't ask for. So I think we all have to do that. But have those graceful and gracious conversations where we just listen to each other. And honestly, I am grateful for my male speaker friends. I've learned so much from them, and hopefully they've learned a little bit from me too. And it's,
we have, Kathy. Don't hopefully bullshit. We have. Know your value,
yeah.
Sweetie. Know your value, right? Come on now. I
stand firm in my value, but I haven't most of my friends from the comedy world are all men. So I did improv at a time where I'd often be the only woman. Not so much at Second City, but in Comedy Sports when I was there. And then when I do stand up, and I run a show, and it's not uncommon that I will be the only woman in a lineup of 14 guys. It's a sausage fest. And so, but I laugh saying that because honestly, I've learned so much about how men think, and I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for listening. And you know what I mean? It's a two-way thing. They're going, holy crap, I didn't know I was mansplaining. And there are times where women, we have to listen, and we can't womansplain. And one of my male comedy friends said, you're womansplaining. I'm like, is that even a thing? And we just laughed. But that's how you get to understanding each other. So don't be afraid to have those conversations, right? And if you do it with dignity and love and open-mindedness, I think everybody wins.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Think about Covey, right? Think first, understand, then be understood. If we can't understand each other, we're not going to communicate. Yeah. So really important.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. There's some of my greatest mentors and my tour mentors. But I say that with love because there's two comics that have been, both men, that have been honestly two of the greatest mentors I could ask for in the comedy space. And I don't know what it was, but years ago they saw something in me, and they've been incredible supporters. So I'm grateful for that. So this has been fun, and I want to do this again. I feel like there's so much more to talk about, and I feel like we just scratched the surface.
Yeah. Well, I really, Kathy, I want to applaud you for being brave enough to have this conversation, because this is a big deal. It's really important. It's also really difficult. So I just want to say bravo to you for having this, because it's important. And hopefully, people actually watch this and listen and understand, that there's something that both genders can do. And there's work to be done so we can meet each other in the middle.
There's no question about that. No question. Jennifer, thank you for your comments and stuff. Well, we're going to have to do it again. I want to bring Phil back because this has been fun. And we're both working towards how do we change it, not just talking about it, but how can we support each other? How can men support women, women support men? How can we all prosper? That's really what it's all about.
Absolutely. Make that pie bigger.
Make it bigger. There's enough pie for everybody. Phil, where can people find you? Where would you like to send them if they want to go, oh, I like Phil, I need me some more Phil? Where can they go?
Yeah, well, my website's getting redone, but it's up. It's philgerbyshak.com, of course. And then, I love LinkedIn. I'm a big LinkedIn guy. Just find me on LinkedIn. If you can spell Gerbyshak, you can find me, or really whatever your favorite social network is. If you tell me that you watch this video and you're like, hey, I want to connect more, I would even, if you'd actually send me a message, I would even let you be my Facebook friend. because I want to learn from people. And I say that because, I'm not just trying to add friends, but I'm really trying to make more connections and connect with smart people. So if that's anybody that's, that's listening to this and they say, you know what, I'd like to connect to me, right? Wherever you're at, that's perfectly fine. I don't need any more connections. I want more connected people. Right?
I love that. I love it. And me too. I feel the same way. So you know what I'll do after we're off here? I'm going to put Phil's LinkedIn profile link in there and mine. Sure. So feel free, everybody, to connect with each other. I think that's what it's about. Phil, you are a delight. We're going to have you back. I can't wait. Thank you so much for engaging with me. When I first put out that letter, I didn't know where things were going to go. I received overwhelming support. I did receive an angry email from a conference organizer, but honestly, the ratio was so overwhelmingly positive that I'm glad I did it. I wish I hadn't waited so long. So hopefully we'll keep doing it. So thanks everybody. Happy Friday. Thank you to Phil. Thanks to Jennifer and to Adrian and to JS and all you guys. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you.
Have a great Friday. Bye.
Bye.